Hello, everybody. My name is Trisha Cornelia from the International Law Moot Court Society. Today, I'm sitting with Bang Sume to do the ILMS Alumni Profile. Bang Sume, would you like to introduce a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is actually Subarkah Syafruddin, but I go by Sume. I graduated from FIE in 2013, and I'm currently an international dispute settlement lawyer based in New York.
So, Bang Sume, you attended the University of Indonesia in the Faculty of Law and you graduated in 2013. Um, during the time you studied there, what were the activities you were involved in? Perhaps organizations or moot competitions?
Yeah, I was part of ALSA and of course ILMS, and I did the IMLA Moot competition, International Maritime Law Arbitration Moot, in my first year. And subsequently, I joined the Philip C. Jessup Moot Court competition, and we were fortunate to be able to go to DC, where our teams actually advanced to round 32.
Right. So you joined the IMLAM and the Jessup Moot. And maybe can you tell us a little bit of why you joined those moots instead of other moots that was available at the time?
Sure. So in my first year, I joined IMLAM because I thought it's like a good stepping stone for me to join Jessup. I was already eyeing on Jessup at the time, and based on my understanding at the time, I knew that many IMLAM alumni went on to do Jessup, like after they finished like their IMLAM competition. So I thought it was a good stepping stone. And as for Jessup, I am always passionate about international politics and law and the intersection between the two. And Jessup was definitely something on my list from the get go.
Right. And so, how would you say your experience during mooting in IMLAM and Jessup differs? Because I understand both of those moots cover very different things, right? Whereas IMLAM covers shipping law,
Mm.
Jessup covers more of a, as you mentioned, it's more in a political context, state versus state. So, how would you say your experience differs?
I think they were substantially different. Like the bodies of law involved were definitely different. Like as for Imlan, the applicable law was English law, and also the format was arbitration. It's much more relaxed, not too like formal. Whereas Jessup involved international law, public international law in particular, and Jessup was much more formal. We have to
Mm.
stand up when we plead, but I really like the adrenaline rush in
Mm.
Jessup better.
That's right. That's right. So, how would you say that did those moods affect or impact your legal career afterwards?
I think they were really influential in shaping who I am today. Jessup taught me a lot about writing skills,
Mm.
research skills, and these skills are transferable regardless of your specialization, whether corporate or litigation, you need those skills. And I think the tenacity that I developed during Jessup was also instrumental
Mhm.
in shaping my career in the sense that whenever, like push comes to shove, like I don't give up. And
Mm,
I
mhm,
think
mhm.
that mentality was built during my time at Jessup.
Right. Yeah, I also agree, especially on the part about the tenacity that
Mm.
you get through mooting. I think this is very useful for our law students, especially to excel in their legal career afterwards with the soft skills that you get, the hard skills, the drive. And but I think not enough people join moots today. And
Mm.
so if you can recommend mooting or international mooting to our students, what would you say, Bang?
I highly recommend joining Moot Court competition, be it international arbitration moot or like international law Moot Court competition. They're extremely influential in my career, and I believe like the skills that you develop by joining these competitions will definitely pave the way for your success.
Right. So after you graduated in 2013, you went on to go abroad and studied in two universities. You got an LLM from the University of Virginia, and you also now have a JD degree from University of Columbia or Columbia University. Um, Can you tell us a little bit of why you decide to pursue further education abroad?
Because I wanted to have a career in international law. And I chose University of Virginia because they have a really strong track record in public international, especially law of the sea. I was just really passionate about ocean law, UNCLOS in particular. So I studied there. And after I completed my LLM at the University of Virginia, I was fortunate to have a judicial fellowship at the International Court of Justice. And I worked for the US judge, who's currently the president of the International Court of Justice. And she recommended me to do a JD to basically broaden my knowledge and also sharpen the skills that I had already acquired. And so I decided to take the LSAT. And I was lucky to have like a decent score to get into Columbia and some other university, and the rest is just history.
Yeah, I think the point that you covered about pursuing a JD degree after you pursued your LLM degree was also very interesting. I think because did you already knew you were going to work as a lawyer abroad, and that's why you got a JD degree, or what was the reason that really motivated you to get a JD degree after you've already had an LLB from the University of Indonesia and also an LLM from University of Virginia?
So at the time, I was probably an outlier because I kind of knew that I did not like practicing law in Indonesia. No offense. I mean, like for some people, like practicing a law in Indonesia is like their dream, and like I have so much respect for them. But like I want to do something that is unfortunately not available in Indo. In particular, I want to do international commercial arbitration and international investment arbitration. And I want to be the international counsel. I don't want to be just a local counsel. And I know that to get into like these fields is extremely an uphill battle. So I needed to upgrade my qualification, hence why I decided to pursue a JD.
Right, that's very interesting. Yeah, so because I also know that currently in Indonesia, there is a shortage of legal professionals who can actually handle those sorts of issues, especially maybe investment arbitration and these kinds of things. And okay, so my next question would probably be, so during the time you studied in Columbia University, you were one of the editors for their journal, specifically the Columbia Journal for Transnational Law. Can you maybe share a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. So just to give you guys context here, so in the US, journals are run by students, and we actually choose like the articles that we're going to publish. And the articles are written by legal professionals and actually law professors worldwide. So during my time at Columbia Journal of Transnational Law, I was an articles editor, and I was responsible for two things. Number one, I was responsible for selecting like the articles submitted by professors from across the world. And number two, I actually work with the chosen professors or legal professionals on their piece. So I actually reviewed them and I make some substantial edits.
Right.
Yeah, so it was an interesting experience because I was just a student, but I had to actually tell, these professors and legal professionals that some of their arguments just don't make any sense, or like they need like stronger support, or like they made grammatical errors that need to be fixed. So yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, that seems like a very interesting experience.
Yeah, like the dynamics involved. Yeah.
How did they take it when you make those revisions?
I think some of them like took the edits and also feedback really well, but some of course did not.
Right.
Kind of expected. And I think it's just a matter of negotiation. Like, yeah, so I always tell them that it's actually in their best interest, like to make some additional edits. And I think if you put it the right way, they'll be more receptive to your feedback.
Right, that's very interesting. So, out of the time you were an
Mm,
editor for Columbia, the Columbia Transnational Law Journal, you studied or learned a lot about how to negotiate with people that may be above you in some sense. And I think
yes,
that's also very applicable, maybe for students when they're starting out
exactly.
in
Yeah,
working in the
yeah,
legal field.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's
I
very
always try to negotiate with
yeah.
my boss.
Which is a
No,
very good skill
yeah,
to
it
have.
is. It is. It
Yeah.
is a good skill to have. I mean, like if you want to uh, get something, you need to
Mm,
advocate like for yourself.
right.
Otherwise, who else will do that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And you also mentioned that you did an internship for as a legal clerk for
Mm,
Judge Joan E. Donahue,
yeah.
who's
It's
currently
Joan Donahue.
Joan Donahue.
Yeah,
Right. She is currently the president for the ICJ.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people will be very interested as to the story of how you landed such
yeah.
a job.
So maybe I'll start with why I wanted to
Mm,
join like this fellowship. So it's a 1 year fellowship at the International Court of Justice, and basically every university worldwide
mhm,
is invited to nominate one or two candidates, including UI
mm,
actually.
mhm,
So uh, my eyes were set on this fellowship
mm,
because I knew some of the best international legal practitioners
mhm,
did this fellowship
mm,
before,
mhm.
including someone that I knew from Jessup, who is now a partner at a top law firm in New York, and also Amal Clooney,
Oh,
who
yeah.
is my professor at Columbia. And so my eyes were really set
Yeah.
on this fellowship. And during my time at the University of Virginia, I was fortunate to develop like a very close relationship with
Mhm,
three professors
mm,
in public international law, and they really helped me
mm.
get this fellowship. They wrote glowing recommendation letters, and I was fortunate to be selected by Judge Joan Donahue, who is an extremely thoughtful legal jurist, and I respect her so much. She is still my mentor to these days, and I think if I had not met her, I would not have been where I am today.
Right. So, maybe another question on
Mm.
that topic. What does being a legal clerk, an intern for Judge Donahue, entail? What was your responsibilities, your job?
So during my time at the ICJ, I was responsible for basically reviewing the record
Mm,
of each case that is on the court's docket. And I also was responsible for researching
mm,
on the legal questions involved in some of like the most cutting edge cases before the ICJ. And basically, to put it simply, it's like Jessup on steroid.
yeah.
So for 1 year, all I did was just researching on you know these novel legal questions and writing bench memoranda.
Mm.
Basically, the judge asked me if I were like a judge at the ACG, how I would decide this case. So she needed like somewhat a devil's advocate.
So you actually were very involved and closely connected with
Yes,
the work
that's
of those judges.
yes. So I personally worked for Judge Joan Donahue for 1 year.
1 year.
Yeah,
Mm.
she had two assistants.
Hmm.
I and another employee at the court.
Right, that's very
Yeah,
interesting. So, as a student or just graduated your LLM,
yeah. I
you're
was.
already
Yeah,
very involved in international law and doing some very substantial work for the International Court of Justice. And what do you think bolstered your application for this specific fellowship? Maybe, especially since you mentioned this is also available in the University of Indonesia. I think
yeah,
a lot of our
yeah.
students will be very interested in doing that.
So I actually asked the judge that I work for why did she select me,
Hmm.
and you know what her answer was? My participation in Jessup.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're gunning for the best
Mhm.
entry level experience in the field of public international law, uh, do Jessup.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So you've been very involved in Jessup.
Yeah.
You did Jessup twice yourself.
Yes, I
You've
did.
coached some Jessup teams. You're coaching a Jessup team right now.
Mm.
What would you say are the kind of people you are looking for in those Jessup teams? Maybe before they have Jessup in their experience and apply for these
Mm.
fellowships, what kind of people are you looking for?
I'm looking for trainees who are receptive to my feedback, who can be bolded, and of course, critical thinkers
Mm-hmm.
who can debate with me basically,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't like someone who's just, okay, like I agree with your point. I want someone who can challenge me.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I think our students would love to know that as a little tip before they start joining selections.
Mm.
But maybe if we move on to our next topic, you're now a very successful lawyer. You're practicing in New York. And so, why did you choose to do lawyering abroad, especially in the US?
So, two answers to that question. Number one, I knew from the get go that practicing international investment arbitration and publicly international law uh, is something that you cannot find in Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that the market is very saturated.
Mm-hmm.
It's limited to London, New York, Geneva, and also Washington D.C. Uh, so my options were pretty limited.
Mm.
And number two, I always like the idea of practicing law in New York. I don't know, maybe suits kind of influenced me a little.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's like, like a silly answer to your questions, but I don't know, like I feel like New York is like the center of the world
Mm.
and like it gives me so much energy. So that's probably why I was drawn to New York as opposed to, let's say, London or
Mm.
Geneva,
Yeah,
because
I
things
think
are kind of laid back there. Yeah,
right, right. I
yeah,
think you're not alone in that sentiment. A lot of our students definitely join law school with the, watching Suits
yeah.
beforehand. Yeah, and everybody, I think, has that dream of working in such a metropolitan big city,
Mm.
the center of where everything happens, as you said. So, but given that experience and your sentiment, do you ever plan on going back to Indonesia and maybe establishing some sort of legal career here?
Uh, Maybe someday. I want to retire in Indonesia actually, because this is like a very like nice place. This is the place that I call home.
Right.
Yeah, I often travel to Indonesia at least like twice a year, and I envision being so in the future I want to become an arbitrator,
Mm-hmm.
and being an arbitrator will give me a lot of flexibility in terms of where I am based,
Mm-hmm.
and I might be based in Jakarta as an investment arbitration practitioner with the focus on being an arbitrator.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you recommend students to pursue the same career or career path that you've chosen, like working abroad, going to really big city,
Mm.
handling maybe more lucrative cases than you can find back home in Indonesia, or do you think that it's not for everyone?
I don't think it's for everyone. So you need to assess like what your priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, family matters more.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, maybe staying here is a better option. But if you think like you are so drawn to public international law and investment arbitration, and that if you think those fields are what excite you the
Mm.
most, then go for it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you would recommend it for the people who are seeking a
Yeah.
more international arbitration kind of career instead of
Yep.
just maybe corporate cases here back
Mm.
home. But how do you think it differs, the lawyering life abroad
Mm.
in New York and perhaps here in Indonesia? Because I think I've talked to some people about this as well. People who lawyer in Singapore,
Mm.
they say the culture is very different, right?
Mm.
Because in Indonesia, you work like from noon maybe to crazy hours,
Mm.
um, at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. How is it in New York, Bang?
I think in terms of hours, like there's not
Much difference.
there's not much difference, honestly. I sometimes have to pull all-nighters, and I think this is like the norm,
Yeah.
across
Globally.
globally
Yeah.
across the world. So I don't think working long hours is an exception to the general rule. And but I think like primary the most significant difference culture wise is the hierarchy.
Mm.
So I think in Indo it's much more hierarchical, and you really have to, be polite. I mean, you have to be polite with everybody, but you have to be friendly. You are expected to attend all the social events. You are expected to know everybody at the
Right.
firm. Whereas in New York, I think the culture is much more individualistic. So you are just, expected to be accountable to the partner that you mainly work for. You're not really expected to attend all the social events and socialize with uh, people from different groups. And I think that really helps me in the sense that I am quite an introvert.
Right.
So I don't really like to, socialize with strangers. Like if, and I think it really helps me a lot in making sure that I can do something else
Right.
besides work. Yeah, because sometimes when you work long hours and you have to socialize, you're not gonna have like time for your
Yourself.
health,
Yeah.
for yourself, for your family, and I think it's a significant loss. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, in New York, like after working, I can go to the gym, I can play the piano, I can socialize with my friends. So yeah,
So you're currently working in Alston and Bird, New
yes.
York, right, Bang? Can you tell us a little bit about the firm that you work for?
Yeah, so it's basically a multinational firm. We It's an international firm, and I am based in New York, and my practice is basically international dispute settlement. So I cover international commercial arbitration, international investment arbitration, and also enforcement of arbitral words.
That's very
Mm,
interesting. So you have gone through a lot of studies in three different
mm,
universities. You've been very involved in moot court competitions. You were in ALSA, and now you're also doing you have a very nice career, a very successful one in Alston and Bird. And it seems like you're a very busy person. I assume you are,
mm,
with the long hours and lots of responsibilities. But as you mentioned yourself, you've covered some things that you like doing in your
mm.
free time. So what are your hobbies, Bang?
So I like to I yeah, gym definitely, uh, playing the piano,
Mm.
and also this might sound a little bit weird, but I like going to the park and playing with the dogs there.
Do you have a dog yourself?
Not at the moment, but I
Not at the
did in the
moment. You
past.
did,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Is it because your busy
yes.
life you cannot? It's hard to
It's
maintain.
hard to maintain, and that's why like I love to go to the park
Play
and
with.
play with other people's dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of our students right now, they're also striving for, they're involving themselves in lots of
Yeah.
activities aside from their studies. And a lot of them find themselves trapped in a
Mm,
situation where they're investing so much time into
mm,
their career, their profile, socializing with other people. And they find themselves, in this situation where they have no time for themselves.
mm,
And sometimes they don't even have hobbies, for example.
mm.
What would you recommend for our students to find that work and life balance?
I think that you really have to have this mindset. Career is a marathon, not a
Mm.
sprint.
Hmm.
So if you treat career as a marathon,
Hmm.
you know that you need to have a sustainable lifestyle.
Hmm.
If you just devote your time to the pursuit of your career, you're gonna be burned out in a year or two. legal profession is extremely competitive
Mhm.
and also stressful.
Yes.
You need to have hobbies.
Mm.
Otherwise, your career will not be sustainable. And I've seen many cases where my friends got burnout like after a year or two
Oh, yeah.
practicing in big law in New York,
Mhm.
and they just left the profession completely. Some even resorted to drugs.
Right.
So I highly recommend you guys to treat your career as a marathon, not a sprint. Like I know it may sound cliche,
Mhm.
but please maintain your health, otherwise, and also do something interesting besides work.
Right.
Yeah,
And so maybe you yourself have found that balance now, but
yeah.
maybe at the time you were a student, especially at the time you're moving, how was your work life balance, or how did you try to balance that?
I tried to balance that. I know it was extremely difficult, like
Mm-hmm.
to juggle like social life and also my career as a
Mm-hmm.
law student. But fortunately, I had like some group of friends. I had some friends who basically always tried like to you know like take me to some nice places so that I could decompress.
Yeah.
So if you have like those friends, tell them in advance that you might need their intervention.
That's very interesting
Yeah,
because yeah, I always say when people ask me how is mooting really? Okay,
yeah,
you spend a lot of time, you invest a lot of time and
yeah.
effort into it, and what do you think about it? And I always say, well, I think of it as an investment.
Mm,
Okay, I might be very busy for 6 months, but I'm gonna come out of the other side with a lot of new skills, knowledge, a new, maybe view about myself or my career.
mm,
And I think one of the things that I cherish the most about mooting is the friends that I do it with,
yeah,
because we really finish the moot together as siblings or sisters or
yes.
brothers, and
Mm,
we're very close. And a lot of people have said that they form their most valuable, long-lasting relationships in mooting. Was this statement or sentiment true for you, Bang?
yes. As a matter of fact, I actually yesterday I had lunch with my Jessup teammate, whom I consider my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, for life. Like
Yeah.
we are so close. Even like we chat at least like 4 times a week.
Mm.
Because like he's just like a great mentor to me. Like
Mhm.
he was much more senior, three
Mm.
years older,
Mhm.
and but we did moot court together, and he was the one who always supported me throughout my moot court
Mhm.
journey, and I remain grateful to him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree that at the time you're moving, you're not just finding friends, but also lifelong mentors. And
Yes.
your coaches also become
Exactly.
your lifelong
Mm.
mentors. Um, so maybe my last question, after you've done so much in your career at such a very young age, what is next in your career agenda, Bang Sume?
So I am just enjoying the process right now. Next year, I'll be a senior associate at
Mhm.
my firm. So with more responsibilities, like I'll have to oversee, my juniors' work, and I just want to treat my career as a marathon, as I said
Yeah.
earlier. So like I just want to enjoy the process, uh, do what I can,
Yeah.
and do not. I maybe it's kind of weird. Like when I was in my 20s, like I had so many dreams, but now like I just want to take things one step at a time, if that makes sense.
That
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think after like a certain point, people need to know like when to stop,
Mm.
like, and
Mhm.
also to be more, you know, present,
Mm.
like in their lives, in the sense that just focus on what you have right now
Mhm.
instead of
That's right.
thinking about what's next.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm at that point in my life where I just want to follow like, the journey.
Mhm.
I still work hard, don't get
Mhm.
me wrong, but like I don't have like these big dreams,
Mm.
like I think at this point I'm pretty content with my
Mm.
life and just want to enjoy the process.
But at some point, maybe in the future, do you see yourself diverging from lawyering, and do you want to do something outside law, legal
Oh,
career?
a good question. So actually, my dream was to become a musician.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to study at Juilliard, but I was
Oh.
not good enough for Juilliard. But I still want to be an amateur musician.
Mm,
Like I kind of miss, playing the piano in front of people.
right.
So maybe an amateur musician,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more, it's just a sidekick. It's not,
Right.
something that like I will completely, move to. So I want to be an amateur musician.
Right.
Yeah,
That's very interesting, I think. Also because a lot of lawyers, they're also musicians on the part,
yeah,
and they have a lot of interest in arts. So it seems to intersect a lot, lawyers
yeah,
and arts.
yeah. To me, I think there are some parallels
Mm-hmm.
that you can draw
Mm-hmm.
between uh, lawyering and also music.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to me, when I write a brief, it's an expression
Oh,
like
that's
of
right.
my brain.
That's
Like
right.
I want certain phrases to be drafted in certain ways because I want to convey certain narrative.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so to me, brief writing and also oral advocacy are forms of art.
That's right.
Yeah,
There is a lot of parallel. If you put it
yeah,
that way, it's a
yeah,
form of expressing yourself in a way, in a very particular way.
yes. Like I'm very particular when it comes to writing. Like I want my brief to be drafted in certain ways, and yeah, I think it's partially because of my artistic
Mm-hmm.
background. Like I treat my brief as my uh, expression of ideas.
Mm.
So I consider brief writing and oral advocacy as forms of art.
Okay, Bang, so we've talked a little bit about your career, your studies, and we've covered some things about your personal life as well. If you can say a couple of words to our students right now, what would you say to them? Maybe what you've learned throughout these experiences?
Hmm. So I think number one is obviously you guys need to join mood competition, be it VIS, IMLAM, or Jessup, or any other mood court competition. Basically, they will give you transferable skills regardless of your career pathway.
Mhm.
And number two, it's about your first job. You might not get your dream job on your
Mhm.
first try, but never give up. I did not get my dream job on my first try, but I persevere and I finally landed a job that I can consider my dream.
Okay, so that's actually my last
Yeah.
question. Thank you, Bang Sume, for your time. I'm sure this session will be very much inspiring and motivating for our students. It's really nice to see you.
And thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for having us as well in
Mhm.
this, providing some time. I know you're very busy.
Yeah. Thank you once again.